Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. I thought it was time. We are over halfway through the year. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I'm not going to get into now. I thought it was time to actually do an update on how things have been going with my Make 9. For those of you who've been watching my videos for quite a while know that last year's didn't go well. And I was very motivated to make sure that this year was going to be better. And the good thing is, by the time it hit like the end of January or even mid-January, I already had a project finished. Now, in some ways it's cheating because the project I did last year was like a full-on colorwork steeked cardigan, and the first project I finished this year was a hat. So, but that doesn't matter. So I'm just going to go through the 9 projects. I would say go and watch, my original video if you want to hear about the 9 projects, but I'm going to go through all of them, not in the same detail, but different details. So make of that what you will. But let's get started with the things that I've already finished. So I think most of these you would have already seen. The first one is the first one that I finished, which was the Wild Posy Hat by Melody Hoffman, which I knit using 2 strands of Plötulopi. I think it literally only used like 100-gram plate, which would make sense, it's only a hat. And I had to knit this twice because I got to about the decreases and was like, was it even the decreases? I can't remember, but I knitted most of it and then just looked at it and was like, this is huge. This is not going to fit. And when I took it off the needles, it was like almost a jumper size. So I had to knit it again, but luckily I think it took me like a day to get to the decreases and then the decreases the next day. I knitted this in Dubai, which, makes sense. Warm hat in a warm place. But I was visiting my parents over Christmas and had actually bought that yarn there. And was like, well, it's part of my Make 9. It's January. Let's get started. So really quickly finished this first one. And it's been washed. It's been blocked. I think I only got a chance to wear it once before it kind of got way too warm. Like this is the depth, like deepest, darkest Peru winter kind of hat. The second one I then finished was also by Melody Hoffman, because I love her patterns, and that's the Tulip sweater, which is always so hard to show off. So I used purple Nutiden, held double, with a Mohair by Artyarns in the colour Hummingbird, which I spent such a long time looking for. If you watch my old podcast videos, I spent quite a while, I think, in multiple videos being like, I finally found it, and then I started and was so happy with it. But the beautiful thing with this design, if you haven't seen it before, is the scalloped I just want to show you the edge. The scalloped edge you get at the bottom so it's knit top down, and when you bind off you do these kind of short rows to get this nice scalloped edge. Beautiful. I love this sweater. I want to make another one, but the only thing I would do differently is I hate how wide the neckline is. I know a lot of people have complained about this. So my plan would be to cast on few stitches to kind of bring that all in a bit. And I'll have to then either do more like raglan increases, working them the same way, or do kind of like double increases where you increase not just 1 stitch either side of the raglan every second round, but you kind of increase 2 on each side. So it's something I have to play around with, but I don't know when I'm going to make my second one, but I really would like another one, just because it feels so impractical to have such a warm woolly jumper, which you can barely see the colour of, that is so wide at the top. Because for me, it very much is more of like an outerwear jumper. Maybe not for like when the hat, that super, super cold winter, like the depths of winter, but it still is something very warm. So it just feels annoying that the neckline is so wide. But I love the yarn. It was beautiful to work with. I love the colour. And the whole thing was just so much fun to knit. And it was nice to know that when you bind off, you had something really fun to look forward to with that scalloped edge, because it was really fun to work. And then, I don't know, I just didn't feel so exhausted. Normally I get to the end of ribbing and casting off and I'm like, oh, I need a break now. But this was just a lot of fun, and you could kind of break it up a lot more and do like one kind of scallop or petal at a time. Really enjoyed that. And then the next thing is the Cindy's Choice socks by Isabel Kramer. So this pattern comes from 52 weeks of 52 weeks of socks, but you can just buy the pattern individually now. And I actually use the recommended yarn, which is Rauwerk DK, in 2 different colors. This is like, they're both, I'm pretty sure they're both dyed, but obviously this is more of like a natural color and this is unnatural. Either way, I'll have the colors and everything below. And I love knitting these socks so much. They're so much fun because, first of all, DK weight socks just go by so much quicker and are much easier on the hands, I find. I knitted these using 3.75mm needles. Recommended, I think, is 4, but I knew I'm a bit of a loose knitter currently. Seems to change every now and then. And especially my colour work is a bit looser, so I was like, let's go for 3.75, and they fit really well. And the cool thing is you've got this really easy colour work, so nothing to be scared of. A perfect project if you're trying to get into colour work. And I think you don't actually have to catch your floats at any point, if I'm not mistaken. Or at least I didn't, because I normally would catch it if it's more than 5 stitches. 5 stitches is where I kind of go, nope, I need to. Any more and I need to catch it. But yeah, really fun colour work. And then you've got these decreases, because these are long socks. Short row heel, so that's really quick and easy. And then you just knit until you get to the toe decreases where you use the contrast colour. So really quick knit. Obviously made a pair of socks that are very warm and not currently weather appropriate, because it's very warm in Germany. Warmer than it ever really got in New York. Or at least maybe it feels like that. But I feel like it hits 30 so much more often here than it did in New York. Anyway. And while I would love to knit these again, I don't need another pair. Like, unless I absolutely ruin these by wearing them all the time, I don't see why I would need another pair. It just doesn't really make sense. But they're something I'd love to knit for friends. As kind of like, you know, comfy, cozy socks. And you don't have to like wear them fully like up to the knee. In the picture, I think you can see that she kind of like has them pushed down towards the ankle. But really comfy, cozy socks. Very woolly. That is the thing with Rauwerk. It's merino, but Bavarian merino. And it's just really nice to be in Germany, to use German sheep. Like fleece from the German sheep is really nice. And I had 2 skeins of the dark colour and 1 skein of the contrast colour. I have a lot left of the contrast colour, as you can imagine, because it's only the toes and the little bit of colour work. But I had about maybe 10 grams left after the first sock of the main colour. And normally I'd then just go for the second skein and knit the second sock, but because this is non-superwash and a very rustic wool, still, softness is such a hard thing to talk about, but it's not the prickliest of yarns, but it is a very, very warm, perfect for cold weather and winter yarn. So what I did is I actually started the second sock with the like bit I had left over from the first one, and then just felted the new skein to it. So that way I didn't have like 2 mini skeins left at the end, and I just had 1 bigger one left, because then it means I'm not going to lose one and then be like, but I thought I had more. And so now I think I've actually got a decent amount, equal amounts maybe even with both of them. Can't remember. But would highly recommend knitting these. They're a lot of fun, and the colour work is really a good one. if you're just kind of getting into colour work. And the last project, so that's 4 out of 5 so far this year, is the Aosta Summer top by the Knit Pearl Girl, where the colour is just really hard to see. So I knitted this using the Pima cotton by We Are Knitters. I love this cotton, which is a bit of a problem considering the whole like Zara debacle with We Are Knitters, but I don't need to buy any yarn now anyway, but we'll see in the future whether I ever will buy from them again. There's worse things happening in the world, but we'll see. Anyway, if you have this cotton in your stash, or if you're okay with buying from We Are Knitters, I would highly recommend it. It is incredibly soft, it's nice to work with, it's not rough on the hands, and I think this colour is really nice too, not that you can get a proper look at it. I think this is dark copper. But the Aosta Summer top is designed to be one with negative ease, which I didn't want. I don't want negative ease in summer. I'm like, I want everything to be like way too big for me so that I can just, my skin and my body can just breathe. So I would normally with Sophie's designs probably work about an extra large depending on how much ease she's built into it. And this is a 3 times extra large, so it's quite a bit bigger than me, even with the intended negative ease. But I had 4 skeins of this, and it literally worked out perfectly. I was worried that I wouldn't have enough yarn and would be playing serious yarn chicken, but by the time I kind of was like, I'm ready to start the ribbing, I kind of knitted until I'd measured out, once I had very little of the yarn left, how much I would need for the tubular bind-off, well, Italian bind-off really, if we're getting technical, and just kind of did the ribbing until I was like, well, I can't get another round out, and it kind of worked out perfectly. I had about like a meter left of the yarn, and part of that is I didn't have to make the sleeves as long. They're quite short because I made a bigger size. So it means that with the bigger size, by the time you're done with the raglan increases, you actually already have like a decent amount of the sleeve. It's not really a sleeve, but it already goes quite far down my shoulders. And then I didn't need much more of a sleeve to get a length, almost to my elbow really. And because of the bigger size, I then also didn't need to make the body as long because it doesn't get like stretched out. And it worked out perfectly with 4 skeins, which I could not be happy about. It was also what I had in stash, because originally I had actually bought Sandnes Garn Linne to make this and then changed my mind because I was like, I think it's going to be too drapey. I don't think it's going to work. I can always do it with that yarn in the future if I want to, but I'm really happy I used this yarn. And like I said, would love some more, but we'll see. I shouldn't really be buying yarn. I have enough. But I'd highly recommend this pattern. The Andalusian stitch is always a lot of fun and is just nice compared to normal stockinette because you have something different going on every couple of rows. And being a summer top, it also just goes by quickly because, well, short sleeves, especially if you make them extra short like mine. So those are the 4 projects I've already finished, which means I've got 5 of my Make 9 still left. Yes, we're over halfway, so I really should, pretty much have my 5th one done. But I don't really mind if I don't get them done. But 2 out of the 5 I haven't started yet. So 3 I've got on my needles currently, which I'll share. But the 2 that I haven't started yet, the first one is the Forager by My Lady Hoffman, where in my original video I talked about felted tweed by Rowan that I wanted to use, or potentially using rustic merino worsted, something like that, by Wool and Twine that I've got in my stash. So once I get to wanting to cast that on, I'll swatch with whichever one I'm feeling, and if it doesn't work out, I've got a backup. So we'll see about that. I'm not too fussed which yarn I use. I just really would like the jumper at some point. And the other pattern I haven't got on my needles yet is the TULC by Albiona McLaughlin, I believe. And that stands for the ultimate lazy cardigan. It's a steeked cardigan knit with 2 strands of Nutiden, which I've now brought with me from Austria to be able to knit that. And I actually kind of went for a different color. Because I had plans to use 2 different colors, 300 grams of each, and hold 1 strand of each color and kind of marl it together. But I've now decided to go for a different color where I actually already had 600 grams. So, and it's kind of a gray with some kind of peaches in there and some other colors. Nutiden has such, like, it's never just one color. But if I start that at some point, you'll obviously see it in the podcast. So the 3 things I've got on my needles currently. The first one is the main one I've really been focusing on, and that is the Gro Shawl by Fiber Tales. So I've made the Gro socks before and really enjoyed that, and that was sort of my test for the kind of like cable that you have to do for these like flowers and I think it's flowers and leaves for that kind of design. And I was like, yeah, let's make the socks first, because doing cables with Nutiden scares me because Nutiden can be quite fragile depending on which color and blend they use. And I was like, that could make it really hard, but it actually wasn't too hard. And this is how far I am now. So you can see you work decreases on this side, and this side is just worked straight. So I finished the entire like textured pattern with these leaves and flowers, and now I just have to knit back and forth. So it's a garter stitch shawl for the most part, and you start with all your stitches and then decrease, which we know I love. And the flowers and everything were a lot of fun to do. Did take a little bit of concentrating to just make sure your tension is okay and everything with them, so this will definitely benefit from blocking as well. But it kept it interesting, but it did slow me down. And now the only thing I still have left to do, which you can see here, is I've got this short braid and then this longer braid here. But if you look everywhere I've got these stitch markers, I don't actually have a braid. I just have 2 stitches running down. And that's because if you've never done a braid, what ends up happening is by the time the decreases catch up, like I just had here, like a row or 2 ago, when the decreases catch up to where you've got these 2 stitches where the braid's going to go, you drop those 2 stitches down to where this knit row first started. So you don't do garter there, you literally just knit those stitches, purl them on the wrong side. So you drop them down, and then you turn those 2 stitches into 1 stitch, but instead of just pulling like all the ladders you've then got, instead of just pulling 1 strand of yarn through, you actually pull through 3, I think it is. You can do 3, you can do 4, you can do 2. There's lots of different ways to work this braid. And yeah, you just pull those through all the way to the top. And that's how you then get that lovely braid. So that ends up being worked all the way to the end. So this one's going to be a nightmare because Nutiden, like Mohair, is really grippy. So when you have to unravel it, you have to be really careful because it attaches to itself and you don't want to rip it too hard. And it's just not the easiest, but it is fun to have something else to do other than just like garter back and forth now and decreases. So Nutiden held double, not exactly summer friendly, but at least with a shawl, like currently it's not that big. But we'll have to see how I kind of feel by the time I get to like the end. This is currently 100 grams worth of Nutiden and I've got 200 more, so 2 more plates. And it should be more than enough, but in the pattern Lega did say like she literally just managed to get it out of 300 grams. So I have another colour. This is L&J, which I specifically bought for the shawl because I thought it would be beautiful in this kind of yellowy green. I have a similar colour where I could always just take 1 strand of this, 1 strand of the other colour, and just at the end kind of use it if I don't have enough yarn. But I'm hoping I do. But if I don't, I'll make it work. It's not going to be a big deal. The other one I have on my needles, which I've had on my needles for a really long time, and I'm not really making any progress with it, or it's incredibly slow, is the Satsuki by Sari Nordland, which is from last year's winter edition of the Amirisu magazine, and it's a beautiful jumper. This is how much I have. I think the only other time I've really showed it off, I had like 1 or 2 rows, so still not much. Work top down. This is currently the back piece, and then I'll have to do the front and then eventually join it in the round, and then I know it will go quicker. But it just hasn't exactly been a project that I've wanted to pick up because it's very warm, and yeah, just, you know, sometimes you're just not feeling a project. But I know I do like the yarn, so we'll see how it all kind of works out. But if it doesn't get done in time, it doesn't get done in time. But not much to say about this one. Just that 3.5mm needles I think I'm using, and it's just a very fluffy mohair, and it can just be a bit tricky to work with, and working flat slows me down. So currently I've been going through a phase where I'm really enjoying purling. That's why I've got a little bit of progress on this. But yeah, we'll see. No pressure. And the last one that I've been working on, that's already on my needles, which I started very recently, is the Sparky sweater by Andrea Mary. So this is how much I have. It's not a lot. So I've literally done the ribbing, I've done the short rows, and I've just started, I haven't even got the needles on here. I've just started the colour work, and I'm using Vovo by Retrosaria. This green is my main colour. This kind of yellowy chartreuse kind of greeny colour is one of my contrast colours, because I'm using 3 different ones. I'm using this one, I'm using one that's kind of orangey red, and then one that's like a reddy brown. So we'll kind of, you know, move through those colours, which I'm hoping will look nice. And yeah, I only started it recently. I haven't really been working on it a lot, but it was just something where I was like, I'm struggling to work on the Satsuki. The Gro Shawl is growing, which is nice. And so this is kind of the next one I'll probably work on, and it's a little bit easier and nicer to work on than the other kind of 2 projects I have on my needle, because this yarn isn't as warm. It's not as thick either. But yeah, it's just the colour work, which I'm not always in the mood for. Sometimes I love it, sometimes I hate it. It also depends what I have to do, how long the like repeats are and everything. But I really like the yarn, and I think it's gonna, like, especially now that I've done a row and I'm on the second row of colour work, I'm kind of like, I like this yarn combo, colour combo, same yarn. But I think throughout it's not going to have the highest amount of contrast, but it's exactly what I was looking for. I've really been loving low contrast recently. That's my Make 9. So that's kind of where I'm at. When it comes to updates, I'm not sure I'll do another one. I might do like an end of year wrap up to kind of talk about, did I do all of them? Didn't I? Did I make any more changes? Not that I've actually made any changes yet, I think. Other than the yarn that I'm hoping to use for the TULC. Because I'm not going to marl 2 colours together anymore. Because I haven't got those colours here, so I can't anyway. But I might do an update, but it might be more of a, here's what I'm thinking for next year. Because if I don't really care if I don't finish these. I don't really care if I don't meet the goals, if I change things up or don't do the last 2, or if I don't get any further than I am now. It's, you know, these goals that I set for myself are meant to be fun. It's just meant to give a little bit of structure to my knitting. It's not meant to cause any sort of pressure. And if that's what I start to feel, then I just kind of, you know, retaliate and I don't do it. So I know not everyone likes setting goals and therefore doesn't like doing Make 9s, but you know, if you are doing it, I'd love to hear, like, how are you doing with it? I know some people must already be done. I know some people are, you know, amazing at knitting and will definitely have already finished them, because they'll be like, oh, well, I've got to make 9, I'll do those 9 and nothing else. Must be good if you're a monogamous knitter and don't, you know, cast on all the time like I do. But, you know, everyone works a different way and that's absolutely fine. And I think at the end of the day, it's also important to remember it's just knitting. As much as it hurts me to say it, because I love knitting, it is just knitting. So if you don't manage to do something, like the hardest thing, oh, we've got sunlight coming through now. Anyway, the hardest thing to deal with, in my opinion, with knitting, if you don't manage to finish something, is if you're doing a test knit and you have to either drop out or say like, look, I'm not going to finish it by the deadline, or if you're doing something kind of knitting, really knitting for other people, whether it be presents, whether it be kind of, you know, sample knitting or something. If other people are involved, that's when I feel a little bit more pressure. But then I think it's also important, like, if you're gift knitting, don't tell people you're gift knitting for them. And that way, if you don't get it done, they can just get it next year instead. It's not going to go off. So I try not to feel too much pressure with my knitting. And the pressure I typically feel is, oh, I just really want to finish this and I can't stop knitting because I love knitting on this. And that's really the only pressure I ever put on myself. Well, I don't even put it on myself. It just kind of happens. But yeah, so if you are doing the Make 9, I'd love to hear what you're currently working on and how you're finding it. And if you're not doing the Make 9, but you have watched this video, I would like to hear why. Like, what is the thing where you're like, no, can't do the Make 9? Because, you know, like I've said, I quite like goals, but I don't have to stick to them. So I can see how some people kind of view it as much as, you know, you could just be like, well, make the goals. Who cares if you don't, you know, meet them? But I know people who literally cannot do that. It's like a personality thing. And, you know, if your brain doesn't let you, your brain doesn't let you. It's just how it works. That's it. That is my update. Like I said, I'd love to hear how you're going with it or your thoughts on the whole Make 9 thing. And I'll be back in another video, hopefully very soon. Thank you very much for watching. Bye!